Hello, good morning and welcome to my channel and welcome to my home. So I'm just making myself a peppermint tea before I go and sit down and talk to you about the main subject for this video, which is about how do you respond to situations in your life that are not desirable. So how do you respond when something goes wrong, when something happens that you don't like, or when you just don't feel completely happy with how things are going. But first I'll make my peppermint tea. I'm sure drinking this is going to remind me of my lunchtimes in the canteen at work back in Bonn in Germany. Okay, so here we are in my lounge. This is all very cosy, isn't it? The sun's come out now and I might start to get a little bit overheated during this discussion, but I hope I can remain steady and calm, and that this is a useful and enjoyable little video for you. For those of you who have watched my videos before, you'll know that I normally make these whilst I'm out hiking, running, or just going for a stroll. But that's not been possible recently because almost 2 weeks ago now I had my prostate removed, and then I had a catheter tube put into my bladder and a bag put on my leg, and that was removed about 2 or 3 days ago, and now I'm just recovering from all of that. Feeling much better today. Still some way to go before I'm back to normal. I'm feeling positive and hopeful that soon I am going to be able to get back to living a very active life. But right now I've got to take it steady and be patient, and and then when there's a little bit more clarity about my situation and when I've recovered a little bit more from the operation, then I can start planning some more demanding or physically demanding activities. But in the meantime, I'll just enjoy relaxing. I've been doing a lot of reading, watching a lot of YouTube videos, watching some good television, and generally enjoying the company of my wife and family. So this health challenge that I've been given over the last few months, and in particular what's been going on over the last couple of weeks, has led me to reflect on how I have responded to difficult situations in my life. And I've actually been quite impressed with how I've handled this cancer diagnosis. At least I've been quite impressed by how I've handled it so far. But when I look back over my life at the difficult situations or at other difficult situations that I've been faced with, I haven't always responded in such a positive way. So let's just look at why it is I feel quite proud of how I've responded to the cancer. So I found out there was a risk of cancer maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and then I went through a whole series of tests and consultations, and gradually it became more and more clear that I did have cancer. During this period, it was a little bit like grieving, I guess. There was a whole load of emotions, guilt, worry, sadness, anger. There was all sorts of emotions swirling around my mind. And you might think, well, why would you feel guilty about having cancer? Well, I know it sounds daft, but I was thinking, well, could I have got myself tested earlier? Did I bring this on with my unhealthy lifestyle when I was younger, or even when I was not that much younger than I am now? There was no logic to it. But emotions are emotions, thoughts are thoughts. You can't always control them. They're certainly not always reliable. But for whatever reason, on this occasion, I was able to move past them quite quickly and knuckle down and get on with the job of doing what needed to be done to get myself better. And the word I would use here is acceptance. I accepted the situation as it is. I accepted that I have cancer. I accepted that there's nothing I can do about the way I lived my life in the past. I accepted that this needs to be dealt with, that I can't ignore it. And I accepted that I needed to begin a journey of putting this right. And once I'd accepted it, there was no room or no need for any of these emotions, such as anger. This was now my number one priority. It was my mission. It was what I needed to do for both my own benefit, but more importantly, for the benefit of my family. So I felt, and I continue to feel, quite good about that. But I wondered, why wasn't I able to handle previous difficulties so effectively? I guess the first thing to point out is that I have had the most amazing support. And if I compare that to other situations that I've been faced with, that has not been the case. So if I go back to when I was about 17, so there was a period in my life from about 17 till 21 when I was really struggling. And I'll just take a sip of my tea, bear with me a second. Well, that's nice. So I left school having failed all my exams and was lost. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I went to college and I resat my exams, failed them again, resat them another time, failed them yet again. In parallel to all of this, I was trying to study some other subjects at a more advanced level. So my whole school, college, educational path was littered with disaster and chaos and failure. And in the end, my dad gave up on me. He said, this just isn't working. You need to leave school, leave college, get yourself a proper job and sort your life out. And so I left. I was just over 17 and I had no qualifications, obviously. I hadn't done any kind of apprenticeship. I was too old to get a proper apprenticeship. I had no practical skills, and there was something like 1 in 10 of everyone in the region was unemployed. And there was an awful lot of discontent in the country. There was no optimism. And so I was in a really difficult situation. And luckily, a friend of mine managed to find me a job because his dad was the manager at the local council depot. And he got me a job as a manual labourer. And to start with, it was great. It was wonderful. It obviously wasn't too much job satisfaction, although there was a little bit. I did a lot of driving, which was good. I enjoyed driving around the West Midlands and the freedom of that and going to see different places, workshops in the Black Country and things. It paid a wage, which allowed me to own a car. It allowed me to go out drinking with my mates. It gave me the opportunity to meet and spend time with working men and qualified, skilled working men as well, and to start to form some ideas about what I wanted in life and how the world worked. So it wasn't all bad, but it gradually got worse and worse. And this was a period, so late 70s, early 80s, it was a period when, at least from my perspective, it was a time when young men when they were first entering the workplace, had to prove themselves as men. So they were treated pretty badly by their workmates. It was almost like there was a rite of passage to be able to be accepted as a workman in their environment. You had to toughen up, you had to show yourself as a man. So part of that was you had to have some stick. You had to put up with some stick in the first days, the first weeks, in fact. So some of it was that, but some of it was worse than that. I had a foreman who used to shout and bawl at me. I was given all the jobs that no one else wanted to do. I was humiliated by having to sweep up for apprentices that were younger than me. I was generally badly treated. And I made the situation worse by responding to that, by coming to work late, by coming to work with hangovers, by disengaging with the whole thing. I was so depressed and so disillusioned that I gave my workmates and my supervisors and foremen a reason to have a go at me because of the way I was behaving. So I was in a downward spiral, and the word I would use here is resignation rather than acceptance. I'd resigned myself to being a low-paid, unskilled labourer who was a failure. And that meant I was not empowered. I was not in control of my own life, and I didn't know what to do about it. However, there must have been something inside me that decided to put up a fight. And at some point in my early 20s, I started looking for other jobs. I thought, I've got to get out of this. I might not be able to fix all of my problems, but I can at least work in an environment where maybe I have more freedom, where maybe I'm treated with more respect. And so I started looking at getting a job as a driver, either a driver of a small truck or as a delivery driver. I loved seeing the United Kingdom, and I wanted to spend more time in places like Yorkshire and Lancashire and Newcastle and Scotland. And I loved travelling around, and I thought maybe I can do this, and then I'm away from people who shout at me and give me a hard time. I'm out on the road, I'm seeing the world, and this could be good for me. So I started looking for these jobs, and one opportunity started to look promising. So I spoke to the manager of my foreman at work, who was a good person, someone I really liked and respected. I explained to him the situation and said, I'm going to be leaving soon. And to my astonishment, he offered me a job in the office. And I just couldn't believe it. I was totally shocked. Why would anyone offer me, a long-haired, scruffy person who sweeps the yard and cleans out the backs of dustbin lorries and does all that kind of stuff? Why would anyone offer him a job in the office? Anyway, I didn't give him an answer. I thought about it, and I talked to my dad, and my dad said, you've got to take this job. He said he started reeling off all these benefits. It's a job for life, there's a good pension, you've got job security, you've got an opportunity to learn and grow. And so anyway, reluctantly, and it was reluctantly, I accepted the job in the office. And instead of wearing greasy overalls and having long hair, a week later I was in a suit with a tie, had my hair cut, and I started working with computers. So where am I going with this story? I had never accepted the situation. I had resigned myself to being a failure, and I'd resigned myself to a life of hard, boring work. But I had been rescued by good fortune. So I'd had a lucky break, a very lucky break. Maybe I'd earned some of that luck myself because the person who offered me the job knew that I had persevered and stuck with this difficult job. But you can't always rely on that. And those 3 or 4 years, maybe they did a lot of damage to me. Maybe they had a real impact on my friendships, on my relationships, and on my general mental health. I know I was very depressed. I know I was drinking a lot. And maybe if I'd accepted the situation as it was, I could have taken positive steps to have found a better way forward earlier in my life and having done less damage to myself. So I could have, for example, said to myself, instead of all that negative self-talk about being a failure and it's all my fault and so on, and that there's no hope, maybe if I'd said to myself, I'm never going to change this job, I'm never going to change my foreman, I'm never going to change my workmates, I'm never going to change the fact that I didn't do as well as I could have at school. So all of those things are facts, but that doesn't mean to say I'm a bad person. I'm a good person, I'm a hard worker, and I can find a better way of earning a living than this. So if I'd taken that more positive, accepting stance, or adopted that more positive mindset based on acceptance of the situation, then maybe I could have got out of it much sooner than I had. Now I need to drink a little bit of my tea, this lovely peppermint tea. Oh, that's really good. So in a situation where you resign yourself to something, you give up on it. Now I know we can't always fix all of the problems in our life. You know, we live in a messy, complicated world. All of us have our difficulties. We're surrounded by different sorts of problems and challenges. You know, if I think of my father, he was chronically ill for many, many years, for probably a couple of decades, in fact. And over that period, he was slowly but surely getting worse and worse and worse. And there were only ever, you know, little glimmers of hope along that path that things were going to get better. But within that situation and that context, I accepted that. I accepted that I couldn't fix my father's health problems. I accepted that I couldn't make my mother and father rich so that they didn't have so much stress surrounding their health issues or his health issues. And within that, I found myself a role that was meaningful to me and that I was proud of and that I enjoyed. And that was the role of a son, of the eldest child and of a son, because I became someone who was able to help them in various different aspects of their lives, whether it was looking after my dad's business when he was in hospital, whether it was taking them to hospital, whether it was helping my mum, lots of different places, whether it was giving them emotional support and encouragement during their darkest days. I felt like there was something there for me to do that was really important. And so I wasn't resigned to the fact that my family was in a hopeless situation. I accepted the situation as it was and made the most of it and enjoyed that close relationship that I was able to have with my parents. In fact, who knows, maybe I wouldn't have been so close to them had my dad had good health. So it's quite interesting to think about that. But anyway, I don't want to go off on too many tangents here, but that's another example of how you can use acceptance to take control of your life and to figure out a way forward that doesn't involve you giving up on yourself, doesn't involve you having a negative view of yourself. So I think that is it. This was a kind of a thought that I was having, and actually reflecting on this helped me with another little issue that I've got in my life. Maybe I'll edit this out because I don't want to make the video too long. But as a result of moving from Germany to England, or mainly as a result of that, I am dealing with some very difficult bureaucratic or administrative tasks that are taking way, way too long to get resolved. They're either administrative tasks or they are questions that I need answers to. And yesterday, I actually, for a moment, I got a little update which wasn't the update I wanted, and for a moment I just felt like crying and giving in and saying, I'm never going to solve this. But on reflecting on this about acceptance and resignation and about how to respond to difficult situations, I thought to myself, hang on a minute, I'm never going to change any of these organisations or institutions that I'm dealing with. I'm not going to change their processes, I'm not going to change their people. They are not trying to make my life difficult deliberately. They really aren't. They probably don't even know who I am. So there is no malice there. There is no reason for me to get angry with any individuals. They are all just trying to do their best in a difficult environment. With that in mind, I can try a different tack. You know, if the waters are too choppy and too rough, then you take a different route. And that's what I'm going to do now. And the different route I'm going to take will not be based on anger or hatred or disgust. I'm not going to be trying to single out individuals who've let me down. I'm going to do this in a calm, collected way, and I'm going to sort my problems out, and in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, things are going to seem much better. So that's how I'm going to address that. So there you go. In thinking about this and talking about it to you, I've actually been able to feel better about an immediate problem that I need to resolve in my life. So that's it. So I hope you've got something from this. It's a very different format to anything I've done before. My intention is to put this out with very, very little editing. So we'll see how it goes. And hopefully I'll be able to go out soon in this nice weather. It's now spring here in the UK. So hopefully I'll be able to go out in it soon and bring you some videos from a more attractive location. So take care of yourselves and speak to you again soon. Thank you then. Bye.